It's time to talk about supplies and techniques for watercolors. In this video, we'll look at supplies and techniques to help build on the skills you learned in part 1. And if you haven't seen part 1, there's a link in the description box below to check that out. So go to the bathroom, grab your reading glasses, and turn up the volume because we're going to dive in. We're moving into part 2 of learning how to paint with watercolor. And in this video, I'm going to go through supplies. We're going to talk about a little bit about cost and where to spend your money and where to save. We'll look at some techniques and tips. And of course, we will create some art by the end of the video. Watercolor paint will typically come in one of two formats. One, it will come in a case or a set. As you can tell, this one is much loved, where you have your little dried pucks of paint. So these are dry and hard pucks of paint all ready to go, and you activate them using water. Watercolor paint can also come in a tube like this, where you would squeeze a little bit out onto your palette, add some water, or use it right from the tube. You can also squeeze the paint out of the tube and make your own palette like I've done here. We'll talk about that down the road. So let's talk about quality of paints. For this discussion, we're just going to talk about the paints that are in our palettes right now. There is a vast variety in brands and colors and types of watercolor paint out there. It's really intimidating to get started sometimes and knowing where to start. That's why I'm here to help you navigate. So let's just look at a couple of examples. So first off, let's go back into this tin of paints that I have created myself from my tube of paint. So this is Ohuhu. They're a pretty decent brand and decent for beginners. So I have taken some of my Ohuhu tubes and created my own palette with the colors that I want to use. This is not an easy thing for a beginner to do. As you can tell, there's lots of cracks and crevices. Does it affect the quality of the paint that you're going to be using? No. But for portability, it can get ugly. You'll see that down the road too. But this is one brand that is quite affordable and not a bad one to start with. I use this palette quite a bit. I enjoy the colors and the paint is half decent. Next, I'm going to show you a great set for beginners. I had showed this at the beginning. This is Mei Lang and it has 36 colors, and so many creators and influencers in the art world will tell you start with this set, and I agree. This is such a good set to start with and play around with. It's not a lot of money. I think when I purchased this set in Canadian dollars, I want to say it was around $30, $30 to $35. And that would have been, I think I purchased it in 2025. So for $30, you've got 36 colors. This will last you a long time. A fun fact about watercolor paint that I didn't realize until I really got into it is when you buy watercolor paint, a little goes a long way, and one palette will last you a very, very long time. So the Mei Lang palette, great for beginners. The next palette I'm going to show you is Paul Rubens. This is an upgrade from Mei Lang. Again, nice colors, good array, quality is good. I don't use this as much because I'm used to my Mei Lang palette, but if you have a little more money you want to spend, Paul Rubens might be the way to go. It's less colors, and I want to say when I purchased this, again in Canadian dollars, I'm in a ballpark, it was probably 30 or 40 bucks. Of course, less colors than the Mei Lang set, but still not terribly expensive. And last, we have my little Sennelier palette. Now, this is an expensive bougie brand. I have not even used this palette yet. I have not used these colors. I have not used this brand before. So we are going to experience this together today. This palette has 12 colors and it's good for mixing and matching. It really has what you need to get started. I believe this palette cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 Canadian. And for 12 colors, that's quite a bit of money when you think of cost per color. So I've just shown you 4 brands, 4 palettes. That is obviously not an extensive list. I think that the important part is to start with one, which is why I love Mei Lang. That's me personally. Next, we're going to talk about surfaces to paint on. And when it comes to watercolor paint, typically you're painting onto paper. The effects you're going to achieve are going to vary depending on the type of paper you're going to paint on. For example, right here, we have my beloved Canson XL Mixed Media book. Yes, my sketchbook, which I use for just about everything, when I'm playing around and practicing. These are nice thick sheets of paper. They can hold quite a bit of water. It is not the best surface for watercolor painting, but it can be done. Let's see if we can find one. Like this is a watercolor painting. And the paper does buckle. This is a Trillium I was playing around with. The paper does buckle, but there is a way to fix that as well. But it is possible to use a mixed media book for watercolor paint. So if budget is a concern and you want to try different types of art, then a mixed media book just might work for you. Another type of sketchbook you could use is a hardcover sketchbook. These are very popular for watercolor painting, as you can see here. This is just a tiny book with some small little watercolor paintings that I have done. I was playing with techniques as part of a watercolor challenge. Nice thick paper. These are lovely because of the sturdiness of the book. The quality is nice, the paper is good, but compared to something that is coil bound, like that mixed media book I just showed you, it is going to be more expensive. So this is somewhere you can save money as well. If you have an unlimited budget or a high budget, you can get yourself some hardcover sketchbooks. Sketchbooks, we use that term loosely because sketchbooks aren't just for sketching. These hardcover books do come in various sizes. This is a tiny one, but you can get 9 by 12, so you can get everything in between. If you have the funds, I think it'd be worth comparing the two and giving one a try. Now we're going to look at two formats of watercolor paper. It's the way they're presented. First, we're going to look at pads of paper. So this is just one I got from good old Dollarama, the dollar store. This has torn off because I've used it so much. But this is just, it says fine grain watercolor paper. We got 20 sheets, 300 GSM, which is grams per square meter. It just means how tightly wound and bound the paper is. It is not cotton. This is paper that is made from wood, pulp, photocopy paper, like paper in your scratch pads that you write notes on and whatnot. If you're looking for quality when it comes to watercolor paper, 100% cotton is the holy grail. That is what you would prefer to use. It doesn't mean you can't make great art with stuff that is made from wood pulp. Having said that, you have to test for quality. These are just a few examples and my thoughts on how they work. When we talk about our dollar store pad, I'm going to get this off. I have some sketches here that we're going to be using later. This happens to be a really thick paper, really thick, which you would think means good quality, but it does not. It is very textured. There is a ton of texture on this paper. And when we talk about texture in watercolor on the paper, it is called tooth. So when you hear people talking about the tooth, it means the texture of the paper. So if there's a lot of tooth, it means there's a lot of texture. You would think, like I said, that this would hold water and disperse the paint and the pigment very well. It's not the best paper in the world. It buckles and warps a lot. It's hard to work on if you do not have this secured down to a surface that you can paint on. And we'll look at that in a little bit as well. So if you see cheap watercolor paper, chances are you're going to get what you pay for. Not that you can't use it, but don't say I didn't warn you. Next, we have the Canson Graduate watercolor paper. And this also comes in a pad and has a nice thick paper. I'm feeling it's a little bit textured, not as much as our dollar store stuff, but it does have quite a bit of texture. This is 9 by 12, 20 sheets, 250 GSM. I forgot to mention this before. 300 GSM is very good. It's probably the highest you're going to see. I think you don't want to try to drop under 100 GSM, so 250 is pretty good. This is a cold pressed paper. Watercolor paper comes in hot or cold pressed. Hot pressed paper tends to be much smoother than cold pressed. Depending on what you want it for, you may want more tooth on your paper. You may want more texture. There are reasons for that, which you will learn as we go along the way. This is cold pressed and it is a wood pulp paper. Having said that, the quality is pretty good. And Canson's a well-known brand, and the quality, it's pretty decent. While it may not be the highest quality brand, it is great for beginners. Next, we have Arches watercolor paper. This is cold pressed. It is 100% cotton, and it is 300 GSM. It is one of the holy grails of watercolor paper. It is a very well-known and very good quality paper. This one is also on a pad. and the paper is very, very thick. It does have some texture. With this comes a high price tag. It is not cheap. And the last pad I'm going to show you, it's another Canson. This is another watercolor. This is huge. It's 12 by 18. We've got 30 sheets. It is 300 GSM, which is pretty good. It is not 100% cotton. I did look it up and I think it is 60% cotton. It's a cotton and wood pulp mix, which is not a bad thing. What I like about this is, yes, the pad is huge, but the quality is good. The surface is actually quite nice. There is a very tiny bit of texture, but it is quite smooth, which I personally prefer. And I like this paper. It is nice to work with. It is very thick. The quality is great for the money that you spend on it. The good thing about buying a large pad like this, and even that Arches and the Canson Graduate ones, is you can cut them. You can cut them to size. You could take this and cut it in half and make two. What do we got? 6x9s. You could have two 6x9 sheets. Now that we've been through some watercolor pads, I'm going to show you a couple of watercolor blocks. And the difference is, it is a pad of paper, and this one is Academy, which is by Bao Hong. And you see I've got my sketches in here. The difference between a block and a pad is that a pad, as you could see before, I would take the pad. Let me grab one now. Let's take a look at Arches. When I flip open the cover, I can flip through and we can pull these sheets off. We can tape them to boards. We can do whatever we want because the glue is just a strip along the top. The glue is just a strip up here along the top, and you can easily just take a sheet and pull it off. When it comes to blocks, it is glued on all four sides. So you're probably thinking, well, how would you get this piece of paper off of the block? It has a tiny little section right at the top, about this wide, that is not glued. And you have to put something in here and run it around the sides to detach it from the block. And I'm going to show you right now. A lot of people will use a butter knife. I have this fun little tool. It's just a leaf and it's resin and it's easy to slide. Let's see if I can show you from the top. I don't know how well this is going to pick up on camera, but I'm basically trying to pull, almost did it with that, trying to pull just enough of that sheet that I can stick my, we'll call it the blade, right? The blade in. And it's literally, this is how small that slit is. And you just gently, as I'm trying not to knock stuff over, gently run this around the edges of your paper. So you can paint on this, do whatever you want, and then remove the sheet of paper like so. And then when I come around this corner and get back to the beginning, voila, our sheet has now been removed from the block. The good thing about using a block is that because it is glued down on all four sides, it holds the paper in place and helps with buckling and warping while you are painting. So that is one of the good features. Personally, I'm not a fan of that. I would rather tear my page off my pad of paper and tape it down onto a surface. We'll see this in action later as well. But a lot of people do like the blocks for the reason that it holds that paper where it is while you're working on it. This particular block of paper is 300 GSM. I believe it is cold pressed. It is 100% cotton. This is a decent quality paper, a decent quality brand. I believe it's a little bit more than the Canson brand, but still a good product overall. And now we have Meeden watercolor paper. This one is in a 12 by 9 sheet. There's 20 sheets here. It's cold press. It's 100% cotton, acid free as well, as most of the ones I've been showing you are, at least the Arches. I'm not sure about the Canson. The Academies are acid free as well. Acid free comes into play more for preservation of your art. Because this is a beginner series, I'm not going to get into things like that too much when it comes to preservation, light fastedness, and you'll learn about all of this stuff down the road. We will talk about it and touch on it. To get started, it's not something you need to concern yourself with unless you really think that you want to save everything that you do, or that you might create something that happens to be a masterpiece. This is something we will discuss, as I said, down the road, not something we're too concerned with at this point. Meeden itself, great brand. I love Meeden for beginners because the quality of most of the products I've tried from them and the price point is very good. You could easily get started just buying Meeden products. So this watercolor paper, as I said, it's cold press. We have our block, and here we've got some samples that I'll be working with. Same thing, glued around all four sides, and it has this little opening in the top where you can just run your knife along or your tool to get your page off. And then contrasting that, this is the cold press, and Meeden also has hot press. Same thing, same size, my 12 by 19, 20 sheets, 300 GSM, acid-free, 100% cotton. Hot press as opposed to cold press is pretty much the only difference. And the difference, as I had mentioned before, is when it comes to hot press, the paper is going to be much smoother. And the cold press will have more texture or tooth. And as I'm doing this, it's too bad we don't have feel-o-vision. You could feel what I feel. But this is very smooth. This is a little rougher. And again, it depends on application. What are you doing? What's your project? What's the outcome you want to have? This is how you're going to decide what you want to get. Starting out with cold press is a good idea because it's easy to find and compare lots of brands in cold press because not all of them do hot press. And if it doesn't specify whether it is hot or cold press, assume cold. If it's a hot pressed paper, believe me, the manufacturer is going to want to let you know that. And next, we're going to talk about brushes because guess what? To get the paint on the paper, you're going to need some brushes. I have a plethora of brushes. I have a multitude of brushes. I have a cachet of brushes that is ridiculously huge. I have done a purge and I still have more than I need. But I have so many as I'm testing and trying things. When I buy sets of brushes, especially because they tend to be cheaper, when I buy sets of brushes, I might find 1 out of 10 that I like. And then what happens to the rest? They pile up and I eventually purge them. I will declutter. That's it, declutter my brushes. But let's talk about a few that I actually like. And we'll test some of this stuff too. We'll have some fun with this. This will probably end up being quite a long video because watercolor, honestly, I really love it. It is definitely one of my preferred and favorite mediums. And the funny thing is, I was so scared to try watercolor for the longest time. And now that I understand it, I absolutely love it. When it comes to brushes, you can get them in so many shapes and sizes and colors and brands, and you have to navigate what you need. So we're going to narrow it down. And this is my personal opinion as a beginner. As a beginner, there is one type of brush that you need to get started, and that is it. That is all. And it is a round brush. In many sizes, but definitely round brush. And a round brush is literally rounded on all sides, so it's even and comes into a tip. At the point here, if I hold it up like this, it looks like a circle. The circumference is the same all the way around. These are great brushes for watercolor for so many reasons, which we will get into. The sizes, the length, the bristles, the brand, all of these things will be discussed as we start working through our project. In addition to that, you could get a flat brush, and this is just literally a flat brush. The bristles are flat, they're squared off, and when you turn them to the side, they're pretty skinny. Unlike the round brush, which just looks exactly the same no matter which way you turn it. This is great for laying down lots of color or lots of water. A lot of people will use a flat brush to put on your clear water for wet on wet. I do that sometimes, but is it necessary? No. Honestly, I prefer a nice, big, fluffy, round brush. And the other kind of brush you could use is a filbert, which is similar to a flat in that when you turn it to the side, it's skinny. But when you hold it down, it's flat like a flat brush, but it's rounded at the top. So it's got that curve. This is great for doing petals and leaves and sometimes fine detail. Honestly, I just go to round brushes. That's what I like and that's what I know. And if you stick with round brushes, then that's less you have to spend on supplies. Once again, if you have a great budget and you have the money to spend, go for it and get whatever you're drawn to. And when it comes to quality, brushes are important. You can get away with not so great quality paint. You can get away with not so great quality paper. Brushes is where I find you might not want to cheap out. I have used so many really bad quality brushes that I have kind of finally narrowed it down to the ones that I really like. We have here Lightwish. The brand Lightwish, I paid, I want to say, I think it was about $20, $20 to $25 for a set of 4 brushes. And I'm going to tell you, I love them. They're easy to work with. They're just lovely brushes, especially for beginners. So thumbs up to Lightwish. I'm giving them a plug there. These ones I'm enjoying as well. Not as great quality, but I'm really used to them. And this was a cheap set that I got off Temu. Like, I know, shade for Temu. Everyone has such a hard time with them, but I own them. I use them. So for cheap brushes, they're actually not that bad. When I compare the bristles of the brush, these are snappy. They're a little firmer, so there's a little more snap to them. Whereas the Lightwish ones, let me get one that's a similar size. They're a little bit softer. And just depending on what you're working on and what you want to do and how you want to lay down your paint, you might prefer one or the other. This is the kind of thing when it comes down to personal preference. What do you like? What feels best to you? The only way to figure that out is to actually buy brushes and use them. I will give a plug to Lightwish, and another brand I will give a plug to is Meeden. Once again, their brushes are decent too. This is a round brush. It's a number 6, and the brushes are numbered when it comes to, well, all brushes, usually from 0, sometimes 1, up to like crazy numbers. We kind of go up to like 10, 11 for regular painting until you get into really big stuff. So Meeden has decent watercolor brushes. This one is Paul Rubens. Also, this is a spendy brand. We were looking at the Paul Rubens paint palette, and it is a little more money, so they're more expensive, but they're lovely brushes too. I find them similar to Lightwish. Let me grab my Lightwish. I find them very similar in texture to the Lightwish, but if you have a little more money and you want to spend on Paul Rubens, I wouldn't be mad at that. And then the last brand I want to give a plug to is Ohuhu. They actually have a nice brush set as well. They're pretty good. And there are tons of other brushes that I have and use. There are videos where I test out products. I look at different brands. I look at different brushes. I look at different paints, quality, price point, all of that stuff. This is just something, a little bit of information to get you started. We've talked about the big 3 things. So your paint, your paper, and your brushes. Well, what else do you need for watercolor painting? There are other supplies required, like water. Water is a good thing to have for watercolor paint. I have 1 cup of clear water, and then I have just a mason jar that I use to clean off my brushes. You'll see how nasty that looks pretty soon. And then spray bottles. This one, obviously well loved. This is just regular water, but this is a more powerful spray. So with that in mind, I got myself another water bottle. I got that recently too. This was off Amazon, like, I don't know, $13, $14. Very fine mist. So if you just want a fine mist all over your page, great for that. If you need something more substantial, this guy will do. And for re-wetting your palettes, this is also good if you choose to go that route. We're going to talk about how to activate paints, which means to get them wet and get them moving onto the paper. And we'll talk about how to add the water, whether you choose to or not. So water, obviously important. How about palettes to put your water paints onto? I've brought back my Mei Lang palette, And as you can see, it's much loved. Look at this. It's a hot mess. When you buy pre-filled palettes like this, they typically in the lid will have little wells. This is metal, but you can see I have put paints down to do my mixing in here in order to get them ready to put onto my paper. But if you want more room or don't want to use this well, what are your options? There are many. You can buy separate palettes. Like this is a heavy ceramic plate. It's got all the wells. I can mix all kinds of stuff in here. I also had bought a little cheapo plastic one, has a bunch of different compartments where you can mix your colors, and you can even mix your colors in the lid as well. So those are specific palettes to painting. But another thing you can do is just get a little dish or a bowl, put your paint in there and swirl it around. It was a heavy crystal trivet of sorts, I guess, container. I've even mixed paint in here. Any surface that can contain water and hold it in, you can use as a mixing palette. It doesn't matter what it is. Paper plates, anything can be used as a palette. For watercolor blocks, you need to get your paper off that block. And we did speak about this little tool. This I got from Temu as well. I know Temu, but it is so good. It's so amazing. But you can just use a butter knife, anything that's flat and not too sharp because you don't want to cut through your paper is a good thing to have. And a piece of scrap paper, another tool to have on hand, is tape. And there are many different types of tape. I'm showing you our magic daffodil from the first video. And you can see that I have taped around here using washi tape. Washi tape is just specific to watercolor painting. And it's pretty and it's cute. But I find that just using some kind of good old masking tape is just as good. Depends if you want really thin lines, washi tape might be nice. But this is just a roll of painter's tape from Meeden. So very much like masking tape. Super easy to use, good adhesive, works well. Super cheap and always good to have. One of my favorite things about painting and art in general, using tape and the final tape pull, oh my gosh, is one of the most satisfying dopamine hits in the world. And anyone who's seen a tape pull gets it. Anyone who's done a tape pull, man, you know that feeling. It is just a wonderful, beautiful thing. And you will experience that with me in this video. And the last thing, not 100% necessary, but not a bad thing to have around, is something that resembles white watercolor paint. Let me explain. If you look at this watercolor palette, you can see all of our lovely colors here. And in this corner, it's very dirty, but is a white. This is a pro tip. Most watercolor painters do not use white watercolor paint. I'm not saying all of them, but most. I do use it sometimes, but most people do not use it for a few reasons. We'll get into that probably later in series, but when people want to show white on their watercolor paper, they just leave a blank area because it's easier to just leave that what's called negative space. Negative space means it's a place where we haven't put any paint. The negative space shows white. So if I were to do a scene where I wanted to have a full moon, I would just paint around the circle where I want the moon to be. So the paper stays white, everything else is in color. It's easier to do that than put down white paint. You could use white paint to lighten a color. Let's say you wanted to use this orangey red, but you wanted it a little bit lighter. You could add white. That's kind of what you learn in painting. Add some white to make your colors lighter. With watercolor paint, it's a little bit different. It will affect the color more than if you were to add more or less water to lighten or darken that color. So it's the addition or subtraction of water. It's the control of amount of water you put in your pigment that will dictate whether it's lighter or darker. So as an example, we'll just take my little blue plate here. If I was working with this and I went, you know what? I'd really like this to be a little bit lighter. All I'm going to do is take some clean water and thin out the paint. It'll automatically be lighter. On the opposite end, if I'm working with this and I think, I'd like this blue to be a little bit darker, I will then wet my brush, go into the color, into the palette, pull up more of that color and add it in. It will automatically make it darker. Those are some reasons why white watercolor paint really doesn't get used much. But here's the thing. What if you finish a piece and some of the white isn't as white as you want it? We have some fixes for that. This is where you get into an additional supply that you could get if you want to. Again, if budget is a thing, you might want to hold off. But I'm going to show you 3 things. One is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. This is white watercolor paint. It is very white. Most watercolor paints are fairly transparent. Even the opaque ones are not that opaque. This is opaque. You can put this white over a dark color, it's gonna look white. Same thing to be said for gouache or acrylic paint, either or. I happen to have a little pouch here of some white gouache, which is just another type of paint. You can use some white gouache. You can use a bit of white acrylic paint to go over those spots. Is it cheating because it's not actually watercolor paint? Yeah, it's cheating a little bit. If that bothers you, get yourself some Dr. Martens. Otherwise, for just a little dab here and there, it's not going to turn your piece into a mixed media piece. And then another option are gel pens. White gel pens work amazingly. Super easy. You're just literally drawing on or putting dots on the spots that you want to be super bright white. So that is a third option in lieu of white watercolor paint. I think we've covered the basics of supplies. I know we went deep on this. We went into a lot of detail. But when it comes to getting your supplies, I really want people to understand where to put their money, where to save, and what you really need and what you really don't. And then the nice to haves. Now it's time to play around. We're now going to test out a couple of things. We're going to test out some paper and we're going to test out some paints just to see the difference between lesser quality and better quality of the two. Brushes I'm not going to get into today because there's just a lot with brushes, but this is just going to be a fun little test to see how our demonstration goes. And here I have 2 types of paper. I got our Dollarama pad, which is super cheap, not the best quality stuff. And then we have some of my Arches paper, which is like the holy grail. Such good paper. So we have these 2 papers to compare. Along with the paper, we have 2 different watercolor sets that we're going to test. We have our Meylang watercolors, and we have some Sennelier watercolors, which I'm not as familiar with. I've only used them a couple times, but we're going to play around with both on our paper and see how it turns out. First up on the docket is our Meylang with our Dollarama paper. Let's get some clean water, and this clean water I have won't be clean for very long. We're only using yellow paint, so it won't get too dirty, but I'm going to wet our paper, wet our surface because we're going to do a little wet on wet. I'm going to get this as precise as possible. No guarantees because, that's what happens sometimes. We're doing the best we can with what we got. So hopefully I didn't color outside the lines too much. We'll find out in a minute. And there we go. So I'm going to use our bigger brush. And we're going to see, look, the paper is starting to buckle already just from wetting the paper. Yep, I know how this is going to go. I know how this is going to turn out. So I've wet my brush and I'm taking some of the paint and putting it onto my palette. And I'm just going to add more water because I want this to be a really light coat. So the more water you add, the lighter your paint is going to be. Let's drop in some of this paint into our wet surface. And like we did with our lovely magic daffodil in the first video, we've basically taken like one of the petals and blown it up. That's what I did. That's sort of the premise of what I'm doing. So our color theme and scheme stays kind of the same. So we want it nice and light at the top of the petal. And then where it would attach down here, it's going to get darker and darker. That doesn't look too bad. That's not bad at all. I'm going to wet my brush. I'm going to take some of the moisture off and see if we can lift some of this off. Let's see. It's taking some of the paint off because you can just take a damp brush or even a dry brush and pull some of the paint off. Dab it on your paper towel. It is taking it up, but it doesn't look like it on the page. So there's no point in fighting that losing battle. Okay, that's all right. You know what? I'm going to take the same brush and we're going to make it a little darker down here. What we're going to do is we're just going to add, I'm going to add a little bit more paint, a little more pigment so that this gets darker. And as you can see, it is darker. I'm just going to flick that up here, just from the bottom up to the top. I'm going to take some of the moisture off and see if we can just get it almost like an ombre kind of look. You know what I'm saying? A little bit ombre. It's kind of doing it. Let's get a little bit more and add some more down here. I think if I add, I'm going to add a little bit of the orange in here. Darken that yellow up a bit and see if that works. Here's another thing you'll notice about cheap paper usually versus expensive is it will start to pill if you work it a lot or if you have a lot of water, which could happen with this. Once again, I'm going to dry that off. I'm going to try and flick this up a little bit, this darker yellow. Okay, that's not the worst thing ever. Okay, that's all right. Let's take a little more orange, make our paint a little bit even darker, and voila. I'm lightly, I'm going outside the lines here. I'm just lightly tapping this because it's pretty damp. It's pretty wet. And it's blooming a little bit. And blooming is just when you touch a wet surface and the paint kind of explodes. So the color and the pigment in the paint move outwards. It's called blooming. And it's not the worst thing ever. The paper's warped. I mean, I'll say that much. I can tell it's very, very warped. And if I had a lot of water in here, it could pool in areas and make it look really patchy when it dried. This is a pretty good gradual disbursement of the paint on this paper, even though it's warped. Not the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm going to let these dry in between and we're going to do 2 coats. So we'll see what happens with this one. And now we have our arches paper. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to put down some water onto our paper, onto our magic petal. That's what I've dubbed these, the magic petals. Since we don't have the magic daffodil anymore, magic petal. All right, let's see. Let's just bring this down here, bring it up here, and see how that goes. And already, like, the paper isn't buckling, it's not warping, it's not doing anything at all, which is amazing. So I'm just going to add some water to our yellow paint going up here because there's less of that orange in it. Maybe I'll take a little lemon yellow, add to that just to make it more yellowy. See how this looks. Oh yeah, that's pretty. I actually like that. More of a lemon yellow, but that's okay. Not mad at it. As long as it's light, the tone doesn't matter to me. It's all about the value. And you'll learn more about tone and value and all that kind of stuff as time goes on. But we just got ourselves a nice light yellow petal. This is really pretty, actually. We're going to try to lift some up just because we can. Okay, so I've taken the paint off our brush and I'm just going to do the same thing. Now, in case, I hope you can see this. As I'm doing this, it is actually lifting up the paint. And you can see it's lifting the paint off the paper. These are 2 kind of light whitish kind of spots. So it works. I'm going to take a little bit more paint. We're going to fill that back in. If you need to lift color off your paper, Arches is really good for that. So let's keep going. We're going to add some more yellow, darker yellow, and do another layer. Do another layer from the bottom, coming up to the top. And just like that, as I'm flicking it up, it's giving a little ombre moment. And I'm barely having to touch it. I'm barely having to do any work. Whereas with the Dollarama paper, the cheap stuff, I kind of had to work with it a little bit more to get that effect. Whoa, I'm liking it already. Good job, Arches. Get some more. That's not dark enough. What do we need? Oh, there's some orange down here. Let's do that. Look at this. There we go. Let's make a bloom. See how it kind of explodes when you do that? Oops. Overshot the runway. It's making a mess. Making a mess in a tutorial. That's all right. Then you get to learn how to fix your messes. So this is once again dropped in the orange and I'm just kind of dotting it on. That's all right. Okay, let's go even darker. I'm having some fun with this now. Let's take it even darker down here. And I'm literally just lightly tapping this. And the paint is kind of, it's a bit, I don't know. Might be a bit too much for me. And it's really easy to manipulate the paint too. Really easy. Take some of that off and push it around. Okay, I'm just going to do that. I'm just kind of playing around with it. I'm barely touching anything and the paint is just kind of flowing. It's almost like it's got a mind of its own. It's almost like it knows what to do. It's the exact same paint, exact same brushes. It's just the paper that's giving us the difference. Is this puff? This might be puffing up a tiny bit, but hardly at all in comparison to our Dollarama paper. So we're going to let this dry and then we'll come back and we'll do a little more. Our papers have now dried and yeah, this Arches is puffed up a little bit. This one is puffed up, not as bad as I thought it would. It's a little bit higher. Okay, I'm impressed because I've worked with this Dollarama paper before and it's been a nightmare. I think it depends on how much water you put on. As long as you don't flood it too much, it works okay. The Arches is still better and will definitely take a lot more water than the Dollarama stuff will. So now that this is dry, I want to add a few embellishments. I'm going to start with good old Dollarama. I'm going to take a tiny brush. So this is a small round brush. We're going to wet it. And what I want to do is similar to in the first video in part 1, remember, if you will, that I would kind of draw like veins coming up from the bottom where the petal would attach to the flower. And then sometimes some white, I was going to say white shadows. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like white lines coming down from the dips and divots that are in the petal. And I'm going to give you a heads up. These actually sometimes look more like clamshells than they do like petals, but you get the idea. So let's start with the bottom. Let's get a nice dark orangey color. I'm just reactivating the paint I already have here. Okay. And let's see. I am just lightly bringing the lines up from the bottom. And that's it. Let's see. I'm trying to keep them as straight as possible. Let's get some more of that orange. Actually, I'll dip right in here. Is that going to be too dark? I'm just testing on my paper here. And you still want to kind of, no, that's not wet enough. Okay, let's get back in here. You still kind of want to follow the curve of the flower. I didn't do that good a job with this one. Let's see. And some of these little veiny things are shorter, some are longer. I would like these a little bit thinner, but you know what? That's not too bad. That's not bad at all. Now we're going to do the same with our Arches paper. Let's get a little bit of dark here. Orange yellow. I'm just going to dab a bit of the moisture off. Let's see how we do. Oh, this is better. I have better control, but I think that's just me. That's just me with better control. Oh, yeah. if I'm just coming up and curving these in or out, kind of following the shape of the petal, that's looking much better. I'm even going to take a little bit and just dab a bit down here. Just even flick these up a little bit. I didn't do that on the Dollarama one. Oh, I like the look of that. Although I did color outside the lines there. It's okay. We have a fix for that too. Let's bring Dollarama back. See if I can do the same thing. Is it going to behave? Yeah, see, it's not, well, it's so-so. It's not behaving as nicely as the arches. Let me bring this over here. You can see the arches, you can really see the detail. It's a little more muddled and mottled on the Dollarama paper. But you know what? I'm still not mad at it. I'm going to bring some more up. Why not? Because I can. Because I can. Nice. It looks, you're getting the two very different looks. They're different papers and you're going to get a different effect. Now I want to explore some white watercolor paint. And as I had said, we've got white here. And I know I always say, it's hard to put a light color over a darker color, but we're going to give it a go because you know what? We can. I'm a rebel like that, okay? Dollarama, just following the dip/divot. Let's see. I had to hold it right up to my head. Yeah, you can't even, you can tell it's kind of wet, but you can't really see it. So let's see what happens when we do this with our lovely Arches paper. Just taking some of that off. Oh, I think I can actually see that. I think I can. Yeah, I can actually see the white. Yeah, it's actually behaving. It's actually doing something on the Arches paper. There we go. See, it does kind of look like a clamshell, but that's okay. I'm not mad at it. Yeah, I can definitely see a difference between the Arches and the Dollarama. The Dollarama, I see nothing. Arches, I actually see the white. Okay, that's cool. Oh, you know what we're going to do? I wonder if I can cover my little mistake here. Wonder if it'll let me do it. If not, it might let me pick up the paint. Got some down here too. Look at that. I made quite the mess, didn't I? Just go around the edge. It's not perfect, but did help clean it up a little bit. Got some over here. What do we think? That's even helped a bit. Okay, I'm not mad at that either. Excellent. So there we go. Now we've tried Maylang paints on our Dollarama and our Arches paper. So next we're going to move on to Sennelier. We're going to start with our Dollarama paper. Get our magic petal all ready to receive our Sennelier paint. So let's see how this goes. Ooh, I'm not painting very straight here. Oops. It happens. We're not getting perfection. It's not going to happen on this channel. Nope. Not happening. So if you're a perfectionist, this might not be the place for you. Let's put a little more water. This is our Dollarama paper. So we know likes to puff up, it likes to curl. So it's really curling now because it's already curled from this. So let's take some of the yellow I had been using and get a little bit from there. A little more water. And I will say, I'll let you know a little bit about the Sennelier paint. It is far more pigmented, so you're going to see a lot more color, much easier, and it is very creamy to work with. It's a lovely paint, and I think it just has less fillers, probably the most brands do. Less fillers, more pigment, and just gloriousness. Like I just put a layer of pale yellow on there and boom, done. Like it just, and this is the Dollarama paper too. So let's darken her up a little bit. keep going. Okay, now we're adding some darker yellow, right? We're just gonna flick this up a little bit, see what happens. Let's see. Okay. I'm curious, what happens if I try to lift some of this paint off? I know it didn't work. Let's see, we'll do it in the center here. Yeah, it is taking it up a little bit. Okay, we're just gonna fill that in. I know that with the Maylang, it didn't work quite as well. So I was just curious to see if the paint would make a difference, the actual brand. So let's get a little bit darker there. I'm gonna drop a bit darker. Still not quite dark enough, but I'm just dotting it in here. Dotting the paint in. I'm going to flick up a little bit. And let's see, what do we think? Yeah, it's doing something. Let's get some orange. We'll make it even darker. See if we can get it looking more like this petal. A little bit darker. And we'll come in with a second layer as well. But I'm just curious to see how this paint lays down and moves around. Like, it's kind of easy to move it around. Oh, that's not too bad. I'm not going to touch it. I don't want to touch anymore because I'm afraid of wrecking it. So we're going to move right into our arches paper. So now I'm super curious to see, because I'm going to start a new well here on my palette, just because the other one has some of that dark orange in it, right? Ooh, almost dove right in with my brush. We gotta put our layer of water down first. Gotta do that. You know what? I'm full disclosure. I'm gonna tell you something I wasn't gonna tell you. I had actually filmed this previously, and when I did this test with the Sennelier paint, I forgot to put the water base down, and I went in like raw dogging it just with the paint, which you could do. I mean, that's fine. But then when I was looking at the footage, I'm like, oh, now it's not the same. So you have to make them the same in order for it to be fair, right? You can't just go in and go, well, it's not the same, but who cares? Well, I'm pretty chill and I'm pretty go with the flow on this channel. But that, no, just didn't sit right with me. So hence me having to do a redo. And I try to not do that, like, because I said, I've said many times, and I'll say it over and over again, I like when I make a mistake and I can show you guys, like, in real time, this is what happens when you paint. Oops, I screwed up. Let's see how to fix it, right? I'm a fan of that. So I don't like not showing you when I did something wrong, but that was one like I couldn't fix. And I had put so much time and effort into it. I was like, no, I got to start over again. So I'm just putting another layer of yellow. Look how pretty that is. I'm going to take that off. Let's see. Let's pick some up. Look at that. Takes it right off. Nice. So we're just going to move the paint around, right? We can move it around, fill her in, and I'm going to flick up a little bit, just gently with the tip of the brush, just flicking it up to try and get that ombre kind of look. I got it a little bit, but you know what? We need more paint. We need to go darker. Going darker. Let's see. Now we're going dark yellow now. Okay. And let's just flicker up a bit. I'm going to take some of the paint off my brush. I got my paper towel over here. And let's just do that. Let's just do a couple little gentle flicky flickers. And there we go. Okay. That's pretty cool. Oh my gosh. Already, like, spoiler alert, right? But look already the difference between the two. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Honestly, the Maylang doesn't look that bad on the Dollarama page, but looking at the Sennelier, yeah, this is like a huge difference already. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to clean our brush. There we go. Wipe that off, and we're going to let this dry, and we're going to come back in and just tweak a little bit more and see what else we want to do with these before we wrap up. Now that our papers have dried, As I suspected, the arches does look better than our Dollarama guy, but we're going to play around. We're going to play a little bit. Got my thin little round brush here. We're going to do the same thing that we did with the Mei-Lang palette. We're going to add some of those veins coming up, and we'll test the white paint as well. So it's time to get back into our Snellia. I'm going to take some paint off there. Let's see if we can make some nice little veins coming out of there. Well, I'm not seeing too much there already on the arches. Okay, maybe I took too much paint off my brush. I don't know. Not loving this either. I can't really see it that much. Now maybe the paint is just too light. So what we're gonna do is let's pop over here and test arches. I think we're just gonna, because we're adding a little bit here and there, I'm gonna pop back and forth between the two pages. Yeah, I can't see it here on the arches paper either, hardly. Okay, we need to darken this baby up. So let's get just a tiny bit of orange. Add just a little bit of orange in with our yellow and see if this gives us the effect we need. I see a big blob there. I'm gonna get rid of that. This is not behaving the way I would like it to. So let's try again. Okay, so we got one line out of it. There's one, but it's thick and it's not cute. It's not the vibe I was going for. Okay, let's try on arches. Okay, I see it, but am I feeling it? I don't know. Not gonna lie, I'm not liking it as much as the Mei-Lang. Although, you know what? It's a bit of a softer thing going on there. Maybe that's why. I'm gonna add just a little bit. I was gonna say green, a little bit of this darker orange to the bottom, and let's just flick it up a little bit. See what happens. Yeah, well, it looks a little better. Let's do the same thing with Mr. Dollarama. It's too much water, I think. It feels like it's pooling a little bit. But, you know, they're different papers. They're gonna behave and react differently. So it is what it is. Yeah, the arches still looks better. It really does. But you know what? Let's try the white now. This is gonna be like a super thick, creamy paint too, because, you know, arches. All right, how are we doing here? Take a little bit off. Okay. Let's just, oh, look at that. Following my dip and divot theory, making it look like a clamshell. You can actually see it on the Dollarama paper. So that's kudos right there. Okay, let's take some off here. See what happens on the arches paper. I took a lot of the paint off there. But look at it. Yeah. Well done, Sennelier. The Sennelier white is actually showing up on both papers. So I am pretty impressed with that. Is there anything else we want to do to our lovely little samples here? I don't think so. This is just like the rest of the videos I do. This is just to show you what's possible and just to kind of play around with a couple things, see how things work, and to give you an idea of not so good quality versus better quality. The paper, clearly Arches is better. This Dollarama sheet, this is like super buckled and warped. The Arches is a little bit too, but not nearly as much. And there is a hack to straighten out pages as well. We're not going to go into that today. However, I will put a link to the video showing you how to do it in the description box below, so you can check that out there. And of course, if you haven't seen part 1 of working with watercolor, I'll put the link to that video somewhere here on the screen so you can check that out too. I'm going to wrap it up here. This was fun just seeing how everything performed, and I hope this has helped you as well. Let me know in the comments, what would you like to see? What's something you would like to learn how to create? Maybe I'll just do a tutorial for that. All right, I'm signing off, so thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.